In this video, we will light the rocket stove for the first time and test it for cooking purposes. Let's go off-grid. After lighting the stove, in the first 3 minutes, the temperature rose from around 67 degrees to about 214 degrees. About 1 minute later, I put a pot of water on the stove, which began to boil about 2 minutes later at 577 degrees. After this, the temperature quickly rose to around 615 degrees, hitting the maximum temperature that my thermometer can read, which is 615 degrees. This shows that at its peak, the stove was at least 615 degrees for about 5 minutes. Once the temperature peaked, I stopped feeding the stove and closed the door, which slowly brought the temperature of the stove down. Over the next 10 minutes, the temperature went from around 585 degrees to about 262 degrees, which is when I stopped the test. Another thing this test shows is the small flaws with the stove. Here you can see a small smoke leak coming from the weld where the firebox meets the flue. However, this is an easy fix that I can take care of. On the bright side, here you can see that the dual air intake allows for constant airflow even when the bottom tube is blocked by ash. Let's see how much wood it takes to bring 64 ounces of water to a boil. In order to test this, first I weighed out 11.8 pounds of wood, loaded up the stove, and lit it, which showed one problem. The thing is, even though the wood was drying inside for several days, there was still a little bit of moisture left in the wood, which didn't allow the wood to catch immediately. After some time, I eventually got the stove to light and got the water to a boil about half an hour later. This test also shows that when you are living without things like a gas or electric stove, simple tasks like this might take longer than if you were using something like a gas or electric stove. After the water got to a boil, I stopped feeding the stove and weighed the rest of the wood that I didn't burn, which came out to 7.1 pounds of wood that I didn't burn. 11.8 subtract 7.1, and we get 4.7 pounds of wood that we used to bring 64 ounces of water to a boil. Now that I have built and used this stove, I have a couple of things that I would change for the next stove I build. First of all, I would add a larger air intake to help with some of the air starvation problems that I had with the stove. Another thing I would add is baffles inside the flue to prevent flames from coming out of the flue. And finally, I would replace the grill on top of the flue with a plate to prevent the pan from getting burned like this. I will upload short updates on the stove every few months or so to show how well the stove holds up in the future.